The whole product. One of the most, by far, one of the most important concepts in strategy. I'll say that about 4 or 5 times during the course, but whole product, something so simple and something that a lot of people ignore. So I'm not even going to ask who uses an iPod or an iPhone or an iPad, because at this point it's pretty much, well, should I even ask who uses one of these products? Yeah, boy, it's not 100%? Shocking. Yeah, okay, there you go. So pretty much everyone. Now, the success of the iPhone and iPad, of course, was built on the success of the iPhone, but of the iPod. But, okay, this is a little bit upside down. This is how Apple's revenues went from here, which is about 5 or 6 billion, to here, which is almost $70 billion in about 8 years. Pretty cool, huh? And it all started here with the iPod. But, so the question that I asked myself when I started writing this was, what's up with the iPod? What actually made the iPod a winner? Okay? Apple actually entered the market, the MP3 player market, late. I counted, 36 plus MP3 players out there in the market by the time Apple actually entered. So some of them, Creative and Rio, which had already become market leaders. Why did Apple win? Basically, the marketing pundits said, well, Apple is cool, or Apple has such a great brand, or Apple has such great advertising. Now, years later, they added another one, which is what? Steve Jobs is a genius, right? But Steve Jobs was a genius in hindsight, right? Why did the iPod win when it entered the market almost 2 years late? Okay, I'll go through some of the evidence. Apple had never been a category winner before the iPod, ever. Apple had never had a number one product in any category before the iPod. How cool is that? Okay? So, cool can only take you so far. Clearly not to number one. Does that make sense? In fact, in the PC market, Apple had never had more than single-digit % share of the market. So not just were they not ever the leader, but they never had more than 9-10% of the market, ever. Okay? Even when Apple was winning all kinds of awards for really, really cool commercials. I mean, if anyone remember the Think Different campaign, it's brilliant. Brilliant. It didn't sell a single computer, but it was brilliant, okay? And in fact, you may remember, Apple almost went bankrupt those days, okay? So much for advertising. And a year and a half after the iPod was introduced, the iPod was still moving sideways. And here's the graph. So the first few quarters, they didn't publish all this data, but this is the first few quarters. It was, up and then down and then up and then So it was a little bit sideways. And in fact, if it was so clear that Apple was going to be the winner, it would have been reflected in the stock price. And in fact, if you looked at the stock price at the time, it also went sideways. So in fact, the market did not expect Apple to win in this market. So why did the iPod win?
iTunes.
Yeah, give me more.
The whole ecosystem, like before iTunes was
Ecosystem, no buzzwords. No buzzwords, right? Ecosystem is hindsight, right? Ecosystem comes later. They did do something October of 2003 that changed.
$1 a song?
Huh?
The $1 a song? The
One.
99 cents you would buy a song.
But songs are free before Apple. So are you telling me that because Apple pushed the price up to $1, the iPod won?
It was about organizing the music, is it?
Are you asking or telling me?
Same.
Okay. It's because they were organizing music?
No, the way with which you could organize your own music, the entire music library that you had.
Which is what, iTunes?
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. Was it iTunes? You have a...
They released to Windows.
They released iTunes for Windows. Yes, they released iTunes for Windows. Now, was iTunes the first media player on Windows? No. Which one, which other media players were there? Huh?
Winamp.
Winamp.
That was really old.
Winamp, okay. What else? Windows Media Player, right? So clearly, Windows in and of it, iTunes in and of itself. So what, right? There was a Windows Media Player. There was another one. Which one was the other one? Not Rio, not Real. Exactly, Real. Real was, right? Was huge at the time. So you're right. iTunes was released for Windows October of 2003. Okay? But so what? And the so what is what's important. Okay? Because Apple was not the first media player. Apple was not the first MP3 player. Apple was not the first of any of these, except maybe one thing. Here's what Apple did that no one else had done before. Apple came up with the whole product. Okay? Every single media player, every single MP3 player thought that what people wanted to buy was just this hardware. Now, this is an iPhone, but assume this is real or creative, right? People thought that all the people wanted to do was an MP3 player. How easy was it to take a CD and transfer that to one of these devices before the iPod? Does anyone remember? How soon we forget, right? It was a nightmare. You had to type in the title of each song, and then, by hand, you had to do this and that. And that's okay in the early market. That's okay for the geeks. Okay? By the way, when I say geeks, I'm not offending. I am one, right? But what I'm saying is that's only a tiny sliver of any market. If you want to grow beyond that, you have to put together the whole product. And this is a concept that Apple may have stumbled upon, no pun intended, but they were the first ones to do it. Okay, they incorporated everything that you needed to play, archive, going to type up all those names. Absolutely not, right? And most of the market was not either. And even though Apple did not invent the concept of you put in your CD and it downloads the cover and all that, they were the first ones to connect, to make it all seamless. That is the whole product. Does this make sense? So when Apple released the iTunes for Windows, they also released the whole product. iTunes, the store, all the connectivity, everything that you needed to have the whole portable listening experience, whatever you want to call it. Okay? The fact that all 36 companies didn't do it is beyond me, right? Of course, they didn't take this course, okay? So what I'm saying is, right now, the whole product, think whole product, all right? Now, let me define a little bit what the whole product is. The generic product is what most of these companies thought that the buyers were buying. Okay? Clearly, what Rio and Creative and all those folks were selling was this piece of hardware. But is that what the customers wanted to buy? So they thought that that's what the customers wanted to buy. That's the generic product, what you ship in the box. Okay? And then around that, you have circles. Okay? The expected product, which is what the buyer thinks she's buying. So when they go to buy an MP3 player, they're not just buying that, they're buying everything. Okay? I mean, imagine a car company that sells you just the engine, right? You go to Tesla, Tesla sells you an engine. They're like, okay, here's the engine. You can go somewhere else to buy the wheels, somewhere else to buy the brakes, and somewhere else to finance it, right? That's basically what all these companies are doing, okay? And then, there are other rings, and not all rings are necessary to sell the product right now, okay? Augmented product is, basically you're giving yourself a bigger chance to win, to sell. Okay, potential product is the idea of what's out there in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. And that's why, Apple and a lot of these companies, they don't pre-announce product, but they give you an idea of where the world is going, according to them. That's called the potential product. Now, the interesting thing is, so some of the things that we need to know right now is that the customer is buying the whole product. Not just the core product, not just the generic product. The outer rings are essential, especially the first ring is essential. The inner, the core product may be okay in the early market, may be okay for the techies, okay? And we'll talk about the adoption life cycle later, but we need to know now and always that the definition of this whole product is dynamic. It changes all the time. It changes with what the competition is announcing, it changes with what the customers are expecting, it changes with a whole lot of things. So this is not just a static circle that is not going to change in a while, okay? And the other thing that's interesting also is the outer rings become the inner rings. Does that make sense? And new outer rings emerge. So things that were out there, future plans and stuff, become part of the whole product. And that's why, the iPod is so much and has so much more stuff today than it could have, they could have dreamed of when they came out in 2004. Does this all make sense? Now, this is not just for consumer goods. Now, for the rest of this class, what I want to do is, instead of using all the rings, I want to use this concept of simplified whole product. So I want to simplify it for going to market. So we need to make a decision. What is it that we need to go to market? That's the simplified, not that we're going to forget about the rest, but what are we going to focus on in order to develop it for a specific market? Okay, so from here on in, we're going to look at the simplified whole product. And this concept works whether you sell smartphones or an $89 printer, right? What are the parts that everybody expects? Well, cable, scanner, paper, things like that. Everyone expects that in a printer, okay? Or maybe if you're going to sell a $1 million printer, there is a whole product for that $1 million printer. Now, it's not the same as, a $1 million printer is not just a big $89 printer. It has other goodies, like, for instance, binder. Like, for instance, workflow software. Does that make sense? So you need to know exactly what your target market needs to develop that whole product. Okay? Enterprise software, same thing. You have the software as the core, whether it's CRM or Salesforce or accounting, you name it. And then you have installation, you have systems integration, you have hardware, software, whatever. Okay? So the question that you ask yourself is, what is the minimum configuration that the customer needs to achieve the buying objective? Okay, not what you think, what the customer thinks. So we need to shift a little bit the perspective. And how do you know what the customer? Solar. All right. Now, for many, many years, solar PV has had this thing that, it was getting nowhere in the US. Okay? How do you make solar photovoltaics compete?
You offer the zero down financing.
There you go. There you go. Okay? So, residential, even commercial, adoption of solar has been very low. It's getting much better. And the usual excuses are solar is too expensive, which it's not. Solar is too complicated, maybe. Technology, what panels do I buy? There are 200 providers. And then what inverters? And, where do I hire an electrician to put this together? Blah, 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 right? So what the industry was basically trying to do for many years, and is still trying to do in many markets, is this. Probably most of us have an iPhone. Basically, solar PV vendors are saying, I'm going to put up these panels, and you're going to give me 30 grand today, and you're not going to have to pay for electricity for the next 20 years or 30. So the equivalent is if I said, will you pay 30 grand for this phone, for this iPhone? It's a really cool iPhone. It's really clean, really green. You'll feel really good when you use it. And you will never pay for anything over the next 20 years. Who will buy this from me at $30,000? Anyone? I need the money. No? 20? 18? 15? you won't pay anything over the next 20 years. How much do you pay for the iPhone? $100 a month? Times 12, that's 1,200. Times 20, that's $24,000. Okay, how about 15,000? No one. So that's what the solar industry was trying to do. Get it? And that's why it failed for so many years. And the way to get out of that, okay, even when on a net present value basis, it made sense to buy solar, it didn't make any sense because consumers don't work that way, okay? So here's the whole product. The whole product is, yes, I want something PV solar panels, but I want it already on my roof. I want it integrated into the grid. I want it financed. I don't want to pay more than $100 a month. Why? Because that's what I pay PG&E today. Period. Right? I'm clean and green and all that, but hey, you know, money is money. Does that make sense? I want it installed. I want it cleaned. And I want it maintained. Okay? Like a fridge. I plug it in. I don't worry about it. Does that make sense? That's the whole product. So the whole product for residential solar is this, or something like it. Yeah, there are panels somewhere in there, but that's not what the customer is buying. Okay? And that's why the winning solar companies are the ones that have put together this whole product. They've put together installation, permitting, rebates, all that stuff. Okay, Solar City, SunEdison, Sunrod, and so on, they're growing like there's no tomorrow. Can I get Solar City stock? Because they put together the whole product. Does this make sense? I don't care what market you're going after, you have to put this together. Okay? And for those who thought that solar was expensive, I had the founder of one of these fastest growing solar companies here in my clean energy class, who basically said this: 78% of our customers start saving money on day one. Day one. How is that for expensive? And in solar, you're going to pay the same thing for the next 20 years. And conventional energy has been going up 5-6% every year over the last 40 years. Okay? So, all right. So, I think yes, question.
So solar, because of the energy expenses going up, may seem like a reasonable model to have a 2-year long-term contract where you're paying the same amount every month. Whereas with other technological innovations, the price actually goes down.
Yes.
So if the customer is paying that much upfront to invest into something similar,
Yes.
it may not be a wise decision to hold them into that long term.
Yeah, so the question is basically, the comment is that solar is different from most other technologies that actually go down in cost, right? Solar actually is going down in cost. Solar PV has gone down 22%. That's their learning curve, right? But the main point is that today, right, what do you need to do to achieve the buying purpose, right?
Because the trick is if they see that solar costs are going down,
Yeah.
they don't want to invest that much because they perceive that it's going to go down. And
Who's they?
customer.
How do you know? Have you purchased a computer lately? Yes or no? It's been a while, but yeah, I mean, you purchase a computer maybe every 3 years. Yeah, computers are going down in price and have been for 40 years, actually 100 years. And they're going to keep going down in price. And yet, all of us have computers. Not only do we have computers, we have iPads, we have iPhones, we have smartphones, we have PCs, we have computers everywhere, right? We buy them more and more, even though we know that in 2 years, they're going to be half the price because of Moore's law. Does that make sense? So how does the PC industry do it? Find what you need to find. Find the whole product today. So how do you do that? How do you find the whole product? That's the question. So if you're convinced, okay, you've said it enough, yes, we need to do the whole product. How? So it's your job as the product manager, as the entrepreneur, to put together the whole product. And you don't need to do it all yourself. You need to put together the resources with company resources, outside resources, as long as the whole thing is put together seamlessly, then it's your job to do it seamlessly, okay? But before you do that, you need to know exactly who is using it or who's going to use it, and how they're going to use it. So we're getting more specific now. Who is using it and how are they using it? Because there's going to be a different whole product for different target markets and for different uses. I mean, those of you who have an iPod and a Mac and an iPhone know it. It's basically the same technology and for different uses. Does that make sense? Different whole products. So the rule is, I think it's rule number 1. Feel the pain and then develop your product. So big mistake, develop the product and then throw it over the wall for the marketing team to sell it, right? That's a big mistake. First, feel the pain. Whose pain? Yeah, the potential customer's pain. Feel the pain and then develop your product. How do you do that? All right, now the pain is not always clear, especially in new markets. There are several stages of pain, and I'm not just talking about medical pain, emotional pain, business pain, personal pain, right? There's latent pain. I mean, a pain that I have, but I've kind of gotten used to it, but I know it's there. There's a, pain where I can kind of verbalize what the pain is and say, the pain is here, and it's like boom, 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 or whatever. I kind of can visualize it and verbalize it. Now, stage 3 is when you can visualize a solution. So here's, I think, what I need. Here's the kind of solution that I need. And finally, you can actually say, here is what I need. I need a refill of this. Now, these 4 different types of pain are different stages of the life cycle. Now, in the beginning, if somebody can say, here's exactly what I need, then the rules of the game are already set. And it's going to be hard for you to enter that market. The markets that are interesting are those markets where, there is a pain, but, there isn't a solution already for that pain. Does that make sense? Now, the fact that it's latent, the fact that, the solution can barely be visualized or even verbalized, means that it's more work for you to try and figure it out. Okay? It's more work for you to build a product around that pain. And there's going to be mistakes along the way. Okay? So to feel the pain, you need to live, quote unquote, with a real customer. So take your target customer and, quote unquote, live with them. If it's a business customer, if it's a commercial printer, be with a commercial printer. Shadow them for a day or 2. Okay? If it's a, consumer product, do your very best to shadow your potential customer. Okay? Live with them, quote unquote, for a day, for a week, for a month. Now, This is a really important exercise. You need to observe, you need to ask, you need to analyze, you need to basically really understand your customer's workflow, if it's a business situation, for instance. Watch everything they do, watch and record, of course, anything that they complain about. I love complaints. Okay? Complaints means pain. Okay? That's where the opportunities are. Okay? Be very thorough about it. The mistake that a lot of people make is that they think that this exercise is about justifying their assumptions. It's not. Your assumptions, your previous assumptions, are just a way to get you started. Okay? It's this process of learning about the customer, of feeling this pain, that's actually going to tell you what it is that he or she needs. Okay? Be open and be awake. Be very awake. Okay? Question?
How do you separate the nice to haves that they don't want to pay for?
We'll get there. How do you separate the nice to haves? We'll get there. Okay? So you ask questions. Why? Dig in, right? Dig in. Why do you do this? Because they can't necessarily tell you exactly what the problem is. So you need to kind of invent a product to cure that pain. Yes?
If you're trying to find out the motivations, if you're trying to find out motivations of customers, but you don't really want to spend too much time in a specific industry, can you go to an industry consortium and speak with somebody who's an expert on that industry?
Yeah, so the question is, can you do it at a big level, right? And talk to an expert, right? Talking to an expert is a way to get started. But that is not going to tell you, because that's going to be a sum total of pains, right? But it's not going to give you the specific thing that customers need. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But it's a way to get you started. Okay, but don't stop there. All right, so develop the whole product based on what you learn from this exercise. And then, if you have doubts, go back and do it over and over and over and over again. Okay? This is very important. Now, I've gone through this whole product even though I still haven't talked about the target market, which we're going to do next week. I just wanted to expose you to the whole product before that. I'll give you an example. Has anyone heard of Pinterest? Who said yes? Oh my God, excellent. Tell me about it.
You don't need to understand English.
You don't need to understand anything, right? I mean, this is an unbelievably well-designed website, right? And is it the work of genius? And I won't go over, everything that they do, etc., right? If you haven't heard of it, go and check it out, or at least check out what they're writing about it. I mean, some people have gone so far as say, this is the next Facebook, which I think is an exaggeration. But to go from 0 to 40 million in like weeks is incredible, right? But here's what I wanted to highlight. They went through 30 to 40 iterations of this thing that I'm telling you about, of this design of the whole product, before they actually launched. 30 to 40 iterations. And in fact, they didn't even start with this product when they started that process. Okay? So what you learn in that process is, I would say, more important than what you start with. Okay? 40 million people can't be wrong, yes? Maybe they can. And the other thing that is interesting about them is that these folks are not your San Francisco or New York kind of crunchy crowd at all. I mean, these folks that they iterated with were in like Iowa, which is where the co-founder is from. Okay, actual craft people. Okay, does this make sense?
One thing on the pain, some customers do not know, some customers do not know what their pain is.
Yes, that's called latent pain. They know they have a pain. It's your job, right? It's your job to figure it out. If it were easy, everybody would be doing it, right? Okay, and not everybody gets it right. But the whole point is you have to do it. Otherwise, it's a good, way to get it wrong, in other words. And then once you know what the pain is, and then you know what the whole product is going to be, then, again, seek partners, seek other folks, companies, organizations, people to put together that whole product. Which, back to the iPod, Apple did not really build all that stuff. They licensed a lot of that technology. The content was not theirs. The covers, album covers, were not theirs. A lot of these things they just put together the right way. Okay? And make sure that everything is there. The thing about the whole product is it has to be airtight, has to be easy to use. Okay? What better description? You don't even have to know English to use Pinterest, right? Can't get any better than that. And examples, a 95% waterproof roof is 100% leaky. Does that make sense? You have to do the 100% thing. Because that 5%, if your PC is 5% unsecure, it's 100% unsecure, right? All right, so it's your job to make sure that they're built right. Let's see, how are we doing with time? All right, I'll go quickly with this case. It's in the book if you want to actually read more about it. The company is called AlphaSmart, and